which questions were going to be asked. And I think 3 million people voted, or 3.5 million people voted. I have to say that there was one question that was voted on that ranked fairly high, and that was whether legalizing marijuana would improve the economy and job creation. And I don't know what this says about the online audience, but I just want, I don't want people to think that this was a fairly popular question. We want to make sure that it was answered. The answer is no. I don't think that is a good strategy to grow our economy. So,
he's a Harvard economics professor and a frequent guest on this program, but we've never had him on, at least as far as I can recall, to talk about drugs. Here's why we're doing this now. He's written a book where he explains what legalizing drugs would save our economy. You ready for the number? $77 billion a year. For comparison, that's the figure that Bernie Madoff admits to bilking investors out of in his Ponzi scheme so they could be all paid back with one quick swoop. Or it's also the 2-year state budget just passed by the state of Wyoming. That means they run their state for 2 years with that money. Professor Myron, thanks so much for being with us, sir.
Nice to be back here.
Break it down for us. You know, we got that figure of 77 million from you. How did you get to 77 billion?
Well, you would get about 44 billion by not spending the money we're currently spending on police for arrests, on judges and prosecutors for all the trials, for prisons and prison guards, etc., for the incarcerations. And you get another 33 or so billion by collecting tax revenue on legal drugs in the same way we collect lots of tax revenue on cigarettes and alcohol. So it's a combination of those two things, and that number puts together the state and the federal, but it gets you what used to be thought of as a big number, although these days it doesn't sound so impressive.
not post Bernie Madoff.
No.
But, you know, some people would say, you know, we make a lot of money by incarcerating these people. We've got people in prisons, and that's part of the economy as well. And would we have to lose the jobs of all these guys who are part of the DEA and police officers fighting on the border? Why would you want to eliminate those jobs?
Well, we don't want to create jobs by forbidding something that people can use responsibly. That argument would say we should go back to criminalizing alcohol. It would say we should criminalize food, because after all, if we made food illegal, there'd be billions and billions of people violating the law every day, and we could hire zillions of police to enforce those laws. So that's just not a very effective argument.
It sounds like what you're saying is that we are almost at the same place today where we were back during Prohibition. That we've got a problem, and the best way of solving it would be of getting rid of the prohibition vis-a-vis alcohol.
Absolutely. And, of course, it turns out that one of the reasons that the nation came to its senses in 1933 was because of a big economic downturn, the Great Depression, and they realized that they wanted more tax revenue, and legalizing alcohol, again, was one way to do it. Now, that's not the only reason to legalize. It's much more important that legalization would, for example, get rid of all the violence in Mexico that we've been observing recently.
You know, it's interesting. Kurlikowski, that potential drug czar that we were just showing there, he's one of the few police chiefs who's actually tried to not decriminalize it legally, but make it so that it's like, you know, maybe a slap on the wrist. Yesterday, on the other hand, we were doing a story about some folks in Texas who were putting people in jails for a long time for just having paraphernalia, a pipe, not even the actual substance itself, in their car. So on one side of the country, we have the law being treated one way. On another side of the country, we've got the law being treated completely differently. It's like a piecemeal approach. Is that part of the problem?
Well, that's a part of the problem, but I think there's a more fundamental problem, which is that the law just doesn't make sense. For something that is potentially dangerous, there might be a reason to regulate it. There might be a reason to tax it. That's exactly what we do with alcohol and cigarettes. But we leave them as legal goods because that way we avoid having the underground markets that create corruption, that create violence, that redistribute income to criminals, and a whole set of negative ancillary effects.
Fascinating. What kind of reaction? I mean, you're a Harvard professor. You're not supposed to be writing about stuff like this. I mean, people are going to think you're a stoner or something. I mean, what kind of reaction have you gotten from this, and do you think it'll ever fly?
From economists, I get a lot of very positive response. Economists think about unintended consequences and recognize that a lot of these negative effects we attribute to drugs are due to drug prohibition. Politicians don't want to touch it because it doesn't seem to be politically viable right now, and that's the problem.
That's interesting. Man, I'll tell you what, interesting discussion. I'm glad we did this. Professor, thank you for being with us, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Analysts rank cannabis as the #1 cash crop in America, well above cotton, wheat, and tobacco, with California responsible for 1/3 of the entire country's cannabis supply. In 2006 alone, estimated sales from California cannabis exceeded $12 billion. If taxed, these sales could have easily generated over $1 billion in government revenue.
The economy is doing badly right now. Companies are collapsing, and we don't know when everything's going to recover. But you know what could help? How about the biggest cash crop in the United States? You probably think it's corn, and why not? It isn't everything. But you'd be wrong. And it's not wheat either. It's actually bigger than corn and wheat combined. It's marijuana. With an estimated take of $35 billion a year, marijuana is by far the largest.
I just don't know, which candidate would be the best for me to smoke weed in my minivan.
How much of that money is growing our economy? Not much. Well, unless some guys at Stanford smoke up one night and think of the greatest search engine ever invented. Not that I'm implying anything. This $35 billion crop, and again, that's just in the United States, isn't taxed, regulated, or employs anyone in the legal market. Imagine what kind of money, both in sales and taxes, could be collected from it if it were legalized. And years of scientific evidence, much of it from the United States government, proclaims that pot is safer than alcohol and should be made legal.
This is not the time to be complacent.
So, the only question is, why hasn't it been? After all, our economy's counting on it.
The answer is no. I don't think that is a good strategy to grow our economy. So